Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for Recasting the Culture, the new Creating in Color. My name is Nicole Young Martin, and I am the producer and host of this series. Many of you recognize me from the award-winning podcast Black Writers Read, which will be launching its sixth season next week on Sunday, September 7th. I'm so excited and have an amazing lineup to share with you all in a few days. Highlighting the work of BIPOC creatives and innovators, Recasting the Culture offers an inside look into the practice and process of writers, musicians, visual artists, curators, community leaders, and educators whose work challenges conventions, redefines culture, and promotes social transformation. Essentially, it's an excuse for me to bring on some of my friends and other cool people doing amazing work focused on community building, equity, inclusion, and creative practice. Recasting the Culture serves as Black Writers Read off-season show. Be sure to visit my YouTube channel if you're not there already, which is just my name, Nicole Young Martin, to access past episodes of Recasting the Culture, and make sure to visit blackwritersread.com to learn more about the award-winning virtual platform and to listen to past episodes of Black Writers Read before joining me next week for season 6. Today, we welcome Michelle May. This is a conversation I've wanted to host on Recasting the Culture, or actually any platform, for quite some time. I've known Michelle for, I'll say, since the start of my career, working together first with the Sphinx organization. Many of you may recognize the Sphinx organization as I hosted Erin Dworkin, the founder and former artistic director of the Sphinx organization during season 4 of Black Writers Read, actually former CEO. I admire Michelle for her drive and what she provides for creative professionals so much. Today is an opportunity to learn more about her and how she can help you pivot your career in the way she has with mine. An accomplished entrepreneur, which, remember all those titles I was reading earlier? Michelle is a lot of those things, and I love how she's found a lot of those things and weave them very interestingly into her identity. And that's actually one of the questions that I have for her today. An accomplished entrepreneur, please visit her website at michellemay.net to learn more about her and also to access her complete bio. Throughout our time together, I will be sharing information on how to find her online and also on Instagram. Here, I would like to offer just some highlights. Now, no, these are just some highlights because she's done so many amazing things. Michelle May, she goes by she, her pronouns, is a licensed professional counselor and a professional violinist and flutist residing in Detroit, Michigan, my hometown, where she was born and raised. She earned a Bachelor's of Arts from Marygrove College and a Master of Arts from Wayne State University and has a certificate in music recording technology from Schoolcraft College. She has worked in mental health and in higher education for several decades. She and her sister, psychologist and musician Dr. Angela Celeste May, who I've worked with as well, co-own A.M. May and Associates, a counseling, coaching, and consulting firm in Detroit. Michelle has presented numerous workshops on higher education topics, stress management, time management, diversity, self-esteem, and motivation. She is a passionate advocate of women, Black people, and the issue of diversity in the arts, and is often called upon to lend her voice to these causes as a speaker and panelist. Michelle is the manager and band leader of Musique Noire, which for folks who follow me on social media know these are this is one of my favorite groups. I've shared a lot of their music online. It's a women-led strings and percussion ensemble performing world jazz music. She is the executive producer of the ensemble's 3 CD releases and music films. Michelle has performed with numerous high-profile Grammy award-winning musicians such as Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, Donnie McClurkin, Richard Smallwood, and Kim, to name but a few. She has made numerous appearances at festivals and concert halls, including the Detroit International Jazz Festival. Michelle is a 2018 Kresge Artist Fellow, a program of the Kresge Arts in Detroit, sponsored by the Kresge Foundation, which for folks, if you're not from Detroit, the Kresge Artist Fellow, it's a huge award. And I remember when Michelle got it, and I'm still in awe that this is something that she now has on her resume. She is also a recipient of an ARC Fund awardee through the Culture Source organization. She is a 20-year member of the Recording Academy, which annually produces the Grammy Awards. As a coach and educator for upcoming and professional creatives, she has worked with the Detroit Public Schools, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, Wayne State University, the University of Michigan, Marygrove College, Kresge Arts in Detroit, Chamber Music USA, and the Sphinx Organization. To learn more about Michelle's work, please visit her website at michellemay.net. And here I go. As for folks who have been following me for some time, I'm still dealing with a chronic cough. I've been seeing specialists here for a little bit. I'm seeing another specialist this week. Throughout our time together, I'll be sharing links to Michelle's website. We'll also chat about the upcoming virtual retreat for creative professionals, which is scheduled for October 26th to the 28th. I've already registered, and I hope you will too, as soon as you learn more information about it. I'd now like to welcome Michelle to the virtual stage and also catch my breath. Hello.
Hello, Nicole. Take your time. Take your time.
This sucks. This is going on year 5 because I got COVID in 2021.
Oh, wow. COVID. I'm so sorry about that. But yet here we are, and yet you are still pushing forward, doing amazing things.
Yeah, because it was funny because one of my projects that I'm doing right now, I'm producing a commissioned play here in Connecticut, and we had a read through the other night, and I had to keep stepping out of the room, and I'm like, thank goodness I'm only just a producer and not an actor on.
Yeah, that would have been something. That's okay. Well, whenever you need to stop and cough, you go right ahead.
Yes. So there's so much to talk to you about, and there's things that I'll be learning for the first time. Sure. And things that I'll be embracing. And as I always do, I love giving my guests flowers for everything that you've done. And even though we've known each other for a long time, preparing for the interview reminded me of, like, I have this question here, but in terms of why you've become a consultant for creative professionals, because you've done so much to craft, and this is what I love too, a specific career that makes every single facet of your identity shine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
For sure. So the coaching actually kind of came on the end, the coaching for creative professionals end. If I had to go in order of all of my, I'm an and. Yes. First would be music. Music is first. I've been hearing music since I was in the womb because my mother was a concert pianist. And so she started all of us on, well, I have a sister and brother. You mentioned my sister, Dr. Angela May, but I also have a brother too, Leon Dale May. And we all started on piano when we were very young. And then we kind of branched off. So I'm the oldest. So I started a couple of years after I was taking piano lessons. This is, of course, when, and I don't mind sharing my age. I'm 63 years old. So this is like the early 70s when I'm in elementary school. And one day in 5th grade, I believe I was in either 4th or 5th grade, a woman showed up with saying that she was going to start teaching stringed instruments, and she brought a violin and viola and cello and showed us all. And I was like, wow, that looks kind of interesting. And I already knew that I knew music because I'd been playing a little bit, piano with my mom. So I came home, and at that time, I was being raised by my grandmother, my mother, and my great aunt. My parents they weren't divorced, but they had separated. And so my grandmother, when I went to her and I said, I want to play the violin, she got emotional because there was a television show back in the day called the Ed Sullivan Show. It was a variety show where, Ed Sullivan brought on all kinds of people up and coming and established, artists and comedians and actors and actresses and things like that. The Beatles got their start on his show. And anyway, so he also put on like musicians of different genres. And so he even had classical musicians. So someone had come on, to this day, I don't know who it was, and had played a beautiful, probably either Meditation from Thais or some beautiful song that my grandmother just fell in love with. And she always loved the violin after that. And so when I came home and said I wanted to play the violin, she was like, oh my God, absolutely. And the funny part is she went out and bought me like this brand new violin, shiny violin, because violins for kids, for students, are made a little more sturdy because, they can, they tear them up, so it had all this shellac on it. And what's so interesting, when you open the case up, it had bright yellow shag on the inside. So you open it was like, oh! So it was interesting because when I took it into the school, for the first day, everybody else had to use like the teacher's instruments, and they weren't in such great shape. And here I had this brand new instrument. Everybody was looking at me like, oh, what is you? But it was kind of funny because out of the people that I started with, I was the only one that made it a career later. So music was first. Later, I did pick up the flute also. My next hat, counseling. Well, really, actually, my undergrad is in teaching, and so elementary education. And I quickly figured out that that wasn't what I wanted to do after I had graduated. So it was it was actually devastating to me because I was a very good student. I had never actually experienced failure, and I felt like that was I did everything I was supposed to do, get the degree, and got fired from my first teaching job.
I did not know that.
Yes. And so the reason was, well, it wasn't because I was a bad teacher. I'm teaching is in my soul. When I was growing up, because I was raised by educators. My father was an educator and was always teaching us things. My mother, my grandmother, and my mother's friends were all teachers. But when I was growing up and we would play like with Barbies, Barbie had to go to college.
Mine did too.
Right. And I grew up around it. I live in a very, people may not know, but you do know about the Boston Edison neighborhood in Detroit, Michigan. It's a very high profile historic neighborhood with a lot of affluent people have lived here, as well as everybody from all walks of life, middle class, blue collar. So I also grew up around a lot of people who were sending their kids off to college. So we knew what all of that meant. Really, it was so ingrained in us that in kindergarten, we knew what a PhD was. So, my mother was like, okay, we knew that, we didn't exactly know what that meant, but we knew you kept going after high school. But anyway, so teaching, the reason it didn't work out was because, number one, I was young and I was still, I had, at that point, I was in my early 20s. I had a thriving music career and I was attempting to try to figure out how to balance the two, and I was not doing it very, very well. And my teaching was suffering. And so therefore, they kind of had to let me go. And other than, it actually turned out well because there was a teacher in the school at the time that was doing kindergarten half-time, and she needed a full-time job. And so when they let me go, she was much more experienced. So it really taught me how, I really believe that things do happen for a reason. Some people don't, but that's okay. And so I was very, at the time I was just like, I wasn't thinking in that way at all. I was absolutely devastated. And so my mother, God rest her, was the one that, I was literally like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be, I felt like I started violin late, even though I was a good player. I didn't feel like I was good enough to like make that my career. So music wasn't going to be my full career. I wasn't going back to teaching. I had no idea what I was going to do. And my mother was like, you got to be kidding me. You're smart. You have all of these, skills, talents, and abilities and things. And I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was just like, no, I'm a failure. And so anyway, long story short, I migrated basically into mental health. And it was because one of the jobs that I had was working in an outpatient mental health facility with a woman who was very ahead of her time. A lot of people were mainstreaming people who had like physical disabilities in group homes and things like that. She was doing it for people with mental issues, so she would go at that time, and now we're talking about the late 80s, mid to late 80s. There were mental health hospitals, and so of course a lot of those are gone now. But at the time, what she would do is she would get those people who were a little bit higher functioning and a little more independent, who were going to be discharged from the mental hospital. Maybe they had a stay there, and she worked to mainstream them into the community. So it was really, really good. And it started my journey into mental health. So at that point, once I worked for them for a few years, I was like, you know what, I think I really want to do this. I want to be a therapist, So I went back to Wayne State and got my master's degree in counseling. And so that's how the counseling started. As far as the producing, I think that was kind of next. Yeah, that was next because throughout my long career of music, I've always played with other groups. And then I had the opportunity to start thinking about migrating from classical music because I'm a violinist and a flutist, and violin, most of us are classically trained. And it's interesting you mentioned the Detroit Jazz Festival because it's going on right now. As we speak. And for years, they would have a string orchestra that would play with many of the big jazz names that would come into town. Like I've got to play behind like Dizzy Gillespie and big names, as well as many fabulous. Detroit is absolutely known in many genres for our music, and so I had an opportunity to play behind a lot of those type of folks, including people who would come to town to perform, which is how I got to play for Stevie Wonder and Barry White and Natalie Cole and things like that. As a matter of fact, Stevie was here last October, and I got a chance to play again with him. So, I being in that non-classical world, especially with the jazz, and just seeing the freedom that some of my good friends who are now very famous, like Regina Carter, jazz violinist, and now NEA jazz master, and some of my other friends like Gwendolyn Laster and Marlene Rice and some others who made, honed their talent here, but went elsewhere, but were improvising and doing things like that. And it made me really want to start learning how to do all of that. And so I started connecting with that world. And I was playing with groups, kind of learning, finding my way with improvisation and things like that. And it was my sister who said to me, maybe you should start your own group, because I had things that I wanted to. I had never thought of myself as like a writer or a composer, but I knew that I had friends who did and were doing this, and they were mostly women. And so I thought, and most of the bands I was joining were men, and no shade on the men, but it was just a different dynamic. It was just so anyway, so that's how Musique Noire got started. I gathered around a few ladies who were kind of interested in doing this, and the rest, as they say, is history. It took me a little while to kind of figure out the group that I had, get the people that I had. But coaching came because my sister and I kind of relaunched our business in 2020, and this was right before everything shut down. The timing was just amazing is how it happened. But I started working with a business coach, and it was the business coach who said to me, you've got quite a following in the creative space. And the reason I thought about coaching was because I started thinking about leaving my job. And I was kind of looking at what I was doing at the job. I was at one of the local community colleges here as a counselor. And one of the things I was really doing was coaching. I wasn't really doing therapy as much, but I was doing coaching. Now, keep in mind, my sister and I still have our business going throughout all of this. We didn't shut the business down. We were like running the business and doing these other things. But anyway, so I thought, maybe there's a way that I can provide these kinds of services, but under my own name, under my own. And so I was initially I wasn't looking for creative professionals. I was just going to kind of do general population kind of things. I wasn't even thinking about niches and, who my ideal client was, none of that. That didn't happen until I got with my business coach. And so when we were kind of talking about the ideal client and all that, it was really she that said it. She had said, she had seen my my social medias and the engagement, and she started really learning about my background. And she says, you have a lot that you can offer creative, musicians and artists. And so I thought about it because people often have asked me down through the years, I don't know how you do all the stuff you do, and do it successfully, and I'm doing it successfully. So, it became like, also people were starting to ask me like, what do you think about this? Or I wish, they're seeing me and the success that I was having. And then they were, coming up, like I have this idea that I want to do X, Y, and Z in my artistic practice or music. Mostly it was musicians initially coming to me because that's what I was known. And so my business coach was like, you have a lot to offer. And so that's when I really worked with her to kind of package everything. And it did start to make sense. And so that's kind of how coaching came. And that really was like 2020, 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so many great questions for you. And the next question comes up because, and I'll give a little bit of background, because of how long I've known you and the fact, so you've performed at Noel Night with an ensemble you've gotten together. And for folks who are outside of the Detroit area, Noel Night happens at the beginning of December and it's all over Midtown and different venues with with holiday music in Detroit and things like that. It's huge. Also, you've done things in the Boston Edison community, which again, for folks, the Boston Edison community, like the homes are immaculate. There's historic mansions there. There's a mix of affluent families and middle class and working class, but everyone, it is a neighborhood. Like everyone knows each other. Yeah, like, yeah. And I know the times that I've come through there, people are like, who are you? Like, that's how,
not in a bad way, just, we're very safe.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, very welcoming though.
And then also you've done a lot, not only have you done a lot with your family, but since your mom passed, because also too, Michelle and I are connected on social media, you shared a lot about your musical beginnings with your mom, which are so sweet. So this question is, family, your community in Detroit are very important to you. How have these facets of your life fed both your soul and your career?
As I mentioned, it is in my DNA because of my mom and carrying me in the womb, and she's playing piano. So it's almost like it was all organically that way. I always tell people I am who I am because of Detroit and because of how I, one, because I think, granularly I'm who I am because of my family. But I just think about every now and then I think about how different would my life have been if I had lived somewhere else. And, Detroit right now is getting a lot of attention for the past 10 years or whatever. And people are really kind of finding out that we really are a really cool city. Those of us that never left have always known this. And, no shade to you who left. But that's
yes! And I actually wanted to stay.
I know. That's okay. But the thing is, you take Detroit with you wherever you go. You know that. So, it has fed a lot of what I've done, and especially, like I said, in the last, I would say, since Musique Noire, and that we have actually 4 projects out. We have 3 full CDs and an EP, and then our 2 music films. It was very important. Both, if you see our music films, you'll see that they're all in spaces in Detroit, and a lot of them are not readily identified as Detroit. It's not like you can see the Renaissance Center, our skyline and things like. One of them that we do have that because we are on a rooftop. But I'm in green spaces and in front of my house and in my neighborhood and things like that. And so those things, it's very important that I make sure that those things are a part of what I do because they basically made me who I am. Detroit is extremely diverse. There's some of everybody here, and a lot of people don't know that. I mean, the Detroit and Detroit area, our immediate surrounding areas, and being exposed to all of those different cultures, really, it also made me want to have our group identify as world jazz because the players in my group are also Detroit area folks. And so they all, and their playlists, all of our playlists are all, when the music that we listen to and exposed to are not just 2 or 3 types of genres, so really, my family exposing me to different types of music because, like my brother started listening to like in middle school because he went to a school that was mostly white. He gravitated to rock music, and then the next thing I know, he's listening to he was the one that was listening to world music. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. But we had ethnic festivals here. The Concert of Colors is our annual festival showcasing a wide variety of genres around the world. And that's been for a very, very, very long time. And so, so that's really how it has fed and continues to feed. I will rep Detroit no matter where I go. And, all the things you hear about, Detroit is resilient, and a lot of those things are very true. But there's a lot about Detroit that we don't have words for. It's just it's a feel. It's just really when you walk the streets, when you meet the people, a lot of people who come into Detroit that've never been here say that it's really a space like none other. And I'd be remiss to say, to bring up also that we are a Black city. We are not like, a friend of mine, Marsha Philpott, she said, and I thought it was very profound, Detroit is one of the few places in America where we don't have a Black community. We are a Black city where other people also happen to live too. And so that's very, very true. And that to grow up with that Black identity, and that particularly Black Detroit identity, is very specific in how it has affected, dare I say, all of us that live here and have been informed by everything that Detroit is, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely take Detroit with me. One, because I have a downtown Detroit landscape tattoo, which I hear that the Renaissance Center is going to change. So I don't.
Listen, that will always be our landscape, for sure.
Yeah. And then also with Detroit, which is so interesting because I've been here in New England now since 2007, and it is the complete opposite. It's very, very white with sprinklings of immigrant communities. And when I talk with students, because a lot of my students, they grew up here, Latine and Black, but mostly immigrant communities. And they're like, and I teach college, and they're like, you're my first Black professor, and I've never read. And I'm like, hold up. Because the biggest thing that I love and miss about Detroit, because it is so Black, Detroit public schools, even my white teachers were like, you're going to learn about Malcolm X and Langston Hughes and Rosa Parks and Shirley Chisholm. And so, when I talk with students now and they've never been exposed to that, and I'm just like, how? And I have to keep reminding myself, because they grew up in places where white was so essential.
It was centered. It was absolutely
centered.
I also bring that up with being a classical musician, of course. As you mentioned, we mentioned Aaron and Sphinx Organization and all of that. But it wasn't until I started I had been working with the Sphinx Organization for years, since 2001. I played in the orchestra. I was a liaison to the all of the jury that, because it's a competition. They have the competition every year. I've also moderated panels. I helped them start a couple of their programs, their educational programs. So it wasn't until I started working with them that I started really realizing, hearing people. And also, I will say, actually, even before then, when I started maybe doing a little bit of traveling, that I was hearing from other Black classical musicians, it's so stressful. I'm the only one, or I'm one of a few, or people don't understand. And I thought, wow, that's not been my, in Detroit, I'm one of many. I grew up around a whole lot of Black classical players. It was it wasn't like some woo thing. It was just natural, so, so I experienced that too. And people would be like, wow, that must have been awesome. I said, it absolutely was, because that also informed me. I wasn't othered, at all. It was just like you walked in with your violin and and still, even today, even though we have the younger people that are coming up are also surrounded by this, so yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and also Detroit is so diverse. When I went to Wayne State for grad school, I lived on West Palmer, and I lived right next door. I cannot remember the name of that Lebanese restaurant, but I just remember sometimes I would get home from work call and I'm like, I want that fattoush salad. And I still
we have amazing Middle Eastern food. And I have a friend that lives in Huntsville, Alabama, and she's from here. And when she comes here, she's like, take me to Mediterranean, because they don't do any of that down in Huntsville. None of that. So, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and the Mediterranean restaurants are starting to pop up here, but and I'm like, this is not. I don't know what this is. Like y'all whitified the food. I don't know what this is.
Right. That's funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you kind of covered this question a little bit. But I would love to hear more about at what point in your career did you decide to integrate coaching into your, and I like to call it your entrepreneurial suite, because everything you do is entrepreneurial.
It is. It's a suite. It is a suite. Yeah. Like as I mentioned, it was really looking at that. This was a service that I was providing at my job, even though it wasn't to create professionals. It was talking about time management. We did delve a little bit into financial things, their career, of course, what courses they were going to take to match their career. But we were also talking about some personal things too, because a lot of clients or students that I was seeing were, some of them were first generation or, college is stressful no matter what. You know what I mean? Even if you're, straight A student, all your family went to college or whatever. College is no joke. Getting into college is one thing. Getting through it and graduating is a whole nother beast. And so for years, over 30 years, well, actually when I retired to run my business full time, I would think I was just shy of 30 years in higher ed, and I think of just a couple months. And this was the kind of advice, support, accountability, all of those kinds of things that I do now in my creative coaching. I was doing that with the students then. And so so it just became it. What was great was that when my business coach said doing creative coaching, it just kind of was natural because I'm a creative anyway. You know what I mean? It wasn't something like new or different that I had to put into place. So yeah, it has flowed seamlessly, and the other thing though is I'm still having to kind of educate people about what coaching is and creative coaching, and also too, there's a lot of coaches out here, but there's not a lot, I don't think, that do creative coaching. But then again, I never generalize because I don't know everybody. People say, well, most people. Well, you really don't know most people, but there, if you do, especially on social media and the way the algorithms work now, if you show an interest in coaching, which means literally you just look at the coach's page or whatever, then suddenly now they're going to start showing you all this stuff about coaching. So you can start to feel like, oh, everybody's a coach. But really, I feel like coaching is just another form of teaching. You know what I mean? Really. Mm-hmm. And there are people who do it well, and there are people that don't do it that well. And so sometimes coaching gets a bad rap because of the folks that don't do it that well. But it really, it was helpful because, like, for example, the retreat that I'm running that's coming up, I had always actually wanted to run a retreat. I just never knew how it was going to ever happen. I've been wanting to run a retreat for some time, even before I left my job, and just kind of interested about it, and knowing that, I put on events before and things like that. And, I'm pretty organized when it comes to those kinds of things. And organization, by the way, doesn't mean I'm all neat in this. And, it's just that sometimes my husband walks into this office and, papers are everywhere. And he's like, I don't know how you do it. I said, but I do.
Yes,
but I do. But anyway, so yeah, I also have to still educate people that, musicians and artists do make a living doing this. Because initially I was getting, like, especially when I went back into therapy, when I retired from my job and just decided to just go back and run my own private practice, it became, oh, so that's your job, but you do music on the side. And it was like, no, I am all the things that I am equally each of those things. Sometimes one might take precedent over the other at a particular time, but that doesn't mean that one's like my bread and butter and the other one's just on the side. I identify equally as all of those, and I bring my creativity to each of them, for sure. Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that people don't understand. And like people even here in like the Western Mass, Northern Connecticut area, I think they're finally starting to get it because there's so many creatives who live here. But I think the difference is many of the creatives who live here, they're entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
However, they made a living in another field first,
Mhm.
retired, and they're using the money from their first career to fund their current one. So when it comes to, and this is something that you and I talked about
Mhm.
in my private coaching sessions,
Mhm.
like when it comes to asking for your fee,
Mhm.
people look at you like you've grown another head. And I'm learning, and I learned why, because many people, they fund their stuff, but I'm also like, no, like this is my career. This is the expertise you're asking me
Yes.
for.
Yes.
Like you should hear like the difference in how I advocate for myself now
Yes.
has
Yes.
significantly changed. Even though
Absolutely.
I've yeah, even though I've always been good at advocating for myself, it's now it's the whole conversation about value added
Yeah.
and the whole conversation of abundance and the whole conversation of especially, and I hate that it took this, but now since I have my doctorate, people are now like, oh, like
Right.
now they're like,
Right.
now they're like, what is your rate? And I'm like, I've been giving you this for years,
Right.
even before,
Yeah.
because I have the expertise. And even when I teach now, I
Mm.
tell students the ways in which, especially because we have a lot, I teach a lot of independent artists. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is how you advocate for yourself. This is when it comes to contracts and negotiating, like in which I have a question for
Sure.
you about that in terms of because and when I teach because I teach arts management and
Mhm.
theater,
Mhm.
I talk about the different ways you have to advocate for yourself based on the hat that you're wearing.
Exactly.
But
Mhm.
that question is coming up shortly.
Okay.
So this question, I have a feeling I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm gonna not assume
Okay.
what. And I asked this question because you do a lot. You do a lot. You know
Mhm.
where I'm going with this.
I do.
So, what does your average day look like? And then what does your average week look like? And how do you plan your time? Especially because I remember there was like one time you were like playing like you were producing like 2 or 3 concert series, you were coaching folks.
Mhm.
And I was like, how do what?
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So all of those things I'm still doing. I have two. I just finished one music series. One other one is still going, and I got to get ready to start planning for next year. I have the retreat coming up. I've been returning emails from people that want me to perform places, and then of course I have a full therapy practice. So first of all, probably you already know that the answer is average day.
Yeah, right.
Right. There's no average day. But let me address why this is amazing, because it may sound like my time, this is chaotic, but I tell people I say no to as many things as I say yes to. I say,
Yes.
yeah. So you gotta know your limits. You have to know your limits. And so, for example, let's just talk about my therapy practice for a quick second, how I structure that. Therapy is heavy, of course, and my specialties are grief, anxiety, and depression, as well as
Woo.
and everything that comes with that, including a lot of cultural stuff. I have clients that are going through, microaggressions and all kinds of stuff. I have a couple. I don't have them now, but I had a couple of DEI executives. You can imagine what they were going through, especially with the new administration. All kinds of, and so my limits are the following. Number one, I don't see more than 4 clients a day. That's enough for me. That's enough for me
Nice.
with everything else I have going on. I also schedule them at times when my energy is best. I am a night owl. I go to bed every night between 11:30 and 1:30, and I still get a full amount of sleep because I usually wake up about 8:30 or 9. So
Mm.
my first client is at 10:30, not at 8, not at 9, 10:30. My second client is at noon. My third client is at 2 o'clock. And then I take a long break because either I might want to go, obviously, I'm going to go eat some lunch. But if sometimes my energy drops in the afternoon, if I want to take a nap, I'm going to take a nap. So, and then I take one evening client. And so they can choose. It can either be 5, 5:30, 6, or 6:30. Just one of those. And that's my day. On Friday, I don't take anybody after 3. I have my 10:30, my noon, and my 2, and then that's it for Friday.
Mm.
Um, I also max out at 27 clients total. Now, I don't see 27 a week. So some of my clients are bi-weekly. Some of them are once a month. I do have several that are weekly. So that is, I know my balance. You also have to know your priorities. So there's many of us, there's many people in private practice that are burnt out. And the reason is because they're chasing money. You can make a lot of money in private practice. And a lot of times what they're doing is they actually are seeing 30, 35, 38 clients a week, so that's a lot. And so it's best to be, to diversify your income. That's something else I talk about in my coaching for everybody, not just, creatives and non-creatives. Diversifying your income is one of the best ways that you can grow your revenue without burning yourself out. And so I'm multifaceted. So that's all I can do on the therapy side, so that I can do all of the other things that I'm doing as well. Now, the music, the way it fits is because the music and the producing that I'm doing and promoting of the concert series isn't every day. It's a lot of work on the front end to get everything together, but it's not like every day, so it slides in there where it needs to slide in there. So that's basically kind of how I do that. So that's kind of really there's no typical on the music side, it just depends, and now that's more seasonal. For example, my music series here in my neighborhood, which, by the way, this is our 16th year, and I got 2 more concerts coming up, that I have to have my all my ducks in a row, like all the artists, all the homes that we're going to have the house concerts. It's a house concert series.
Wow.
Homes, all of that stuff. I have to have that done and set and ready to go by January, even though the concerts don't start until May, because our board, the board of directors for our neighborhood, has to approve my budget. And I can't start, sending checks or contracts or any of that kind of stuff until I know that my budget is approved. So as we speak, I'm already starting to recruit homeowners. I recruited one this morning, and now I've talked to some musicians that I want to bring on, so that's kind of, like I said, it's seasonal. It depends on when the actual events are going to happen. Then that determines how far in advance I start working on those things. Now, just, Music Noir has kind of taken a slight hiatus because all the group members are all over the place right now. Yeah. And it's a lot to put together what we do. But my intention is for 2026 to try to put together at least 2 to 3 concerts, or we'll see. We may not be recording anymore because that's very expensive and a lot. But if we did, it might be 1 or 2 singles or something like that. But again, it depends. It depends on if we have a gig coming up in July, then, I just kind of get started when I need to get started, April, May, or before, rounding everybody up. So I have atypical days. I think if anything, probably the more typical would be the therapy. But the other thing about that is I'm also careful about how I treat my body, mind, and spirit with this. So once a month, I have a spa day. And that I know it's the second Thursday of every month.
Yes.
No clients. There are no clients. I have a friend who has been she's been a masseuse for many years. She does actually a lot of services. And what's wonderful is that her ex-husband built her a spa in her lower level of her home. And so it is the most relaxing. And I've been going to her for many decades. We've been friends for even before she had the place at home. So that's one. And then once a quarter, I try to do either a staycation or actually go somewhere. So that means, and it's not always a vacation, like my business coach has an annual event. So in January, and it's in Florida. So that's my quarterly event there. The counseling association that I belong to, they're going to have their national convention in Columbus in April. So that'll be, going in the second quarter, that'll be my getaway, kind of thing. My husband and I in October are going to go, or November, are going to go visit friends in Oklahoma City. So that's, again, it really helps to keep that balance. And that's what's more important to me than making sure that, I have average days.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which for folks, and this is so important, and I'm asking this question because I have my students watch this, more or less for them. Mm-hmm. I know this, but I would love to get it on record.
Sure.
Where is everyone based that is in Music Noir? And I know one person in particular, I believe she's on tour right now.
Okay, so all right. So there's the four main players, because there's four main players, and then I have three string players, and counting myself, and a percussionist, and then we bring in a guitarist usually and a bass player, and sometimes that's what changes out. Okay, so myself, I'm based in Detroit, and then Jovia Armstrong is the percussionist in the group, and all of these ladies are good friends, of course, and like sisters to me now. So Jovia is quite a warrior. So she's here. She's from Detroit. She spent a lot of time in Chicago because that's where she got her undergraduate degree, and then she just kind of made her home base there. And that's when she was trying to really start to build her career, and was doing a ton of traveling, nationally and internationally, because she's a percussionist, and in doing a lot of different genres, and she has a really unique setup with her percussion. So she decided that life was wearing her out. So she wanted to get a little more settled. And so she said, you know what, I'm going back to grad school. I believe she has a master's too. I can't remember now. All of a sudden, I'm not remembering. But she decided to get her doctorate. And she went out to the University of California, Irvine. And so she lived in California for quite some time. I think she has family out there also too. So she lived there for a few years while she was completing her doctorate. And then she got her dream job at the University of Virginia. So she moved to, I believe it's in Alexandria. I'm not sure, but she moved to Virginia. She was offered a professorship there. And so that's where she is now. The great thing about them is that they have told her, like, you know how you have to kind of do research and all that stuff so you get the tenure. For her, they're telling her, we just want you to perform and write, and compose. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, and the things that she's very much now into soundscapes and all kinds of very electronics and all kinds of wonderful things. Her classes, they're allowing her to develop classes. The course names are just, I'm like, can I take these classes? So they're so interesting. So she's in Virginia, but she's also still traveling. She was just here. We have a Women Who Drum Festival that Galen McKinney, drummer Galen McKinney, who's a very well-known drummer here in Detroit and elsewhere, developed. And so she was here for that. Leslie DeShazer is our violist, although she plays a little violin, but mainly she's viola. And so she, for the past 3 years almost, was on tour with Hamilton, the play Hamilton. That's wrapped up and done now. And now she has packed up from the Detroit area, and she's relocated to Chicago. So she is in Chicago now, and which is a great place for her too. She's a fabulous player, a really wonderful, multi-faceted performer on viola. She's very good at jazz, very good at a lot of different genres. And so she's going to do very well in Chicago. There's a lot of work there and things like that. And then Leah Chelaby, when you see her name written, everybody says Celebi. It's Chelaby is how you pronounce it. I don't know her exact title, but I think it's not vice president for engagement. I can't think, these places have these titles, but she's an executive at the Grosse Pointe War Memorial. And so the Grosse Pointe War Memorial, though, is very much, they do a lot of community events, and a lot of those revolve around music. And so she's kind of been in a producer role with them, developing series, bringing musicians, as well as other things that she's been doing in her role there. So she's still local. She and I are still here. She's in Grosse Pointe. She and her family live in Grosse Pointe. She's married to John Chelaby, who is an amazing pianist and drummer and composer. Many of the pieces that you like, he wrote for Musique Noire. And so I saw him recently at a mutual friend's wedding. Too, LaTanya Woods, violist, who just got married. And I was telling him, he was like, when are you all getting back out? And I said, when are you going to write us another song?
Yes.
Write us another song. We'll get back out there, so. But anyway, so so that's where everybody is right now. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. I'm going to jump a couple of questions.
Sure.
So speaking of Musique Noire, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Which album has been your favorite to produce, and why?
It's funny because I meant to bring them. I don't usually have them sitting over here, but is this it? No, that's not it. Okay. I would say, I was trying to see if I had it over there. Reflections We Breathe. That's probably my favorite. And
Oh.
that's third. That's the third album because we had a full length, our initial one, Good Hair. I mean, Good Hair is great because it got us out there. And then we did like a holiday thing, EP, and then we did Reflections We Breathe. And the reason it's one of my favorites, first of all, in this very room, it was the concept was developed and it was based on Jovia. The very first album we did, Good Hair, has a little bit of everything on there. And one of the things I did that for is because most of these albums have been my concept. Because I wanted people to see that we could do a little bit of everything. So on the first album, there's Latin, there's funk, there's kind of swing, there's ballads, just kind of all over the place. And so it was Jovia who said, we need to do maybe we do like a concept album or something where we're a little more focused. And she was literally on the other side of this screen is on my TV room. And so we were sitting in the studio talking about it. And so I said, yeah, that would be kind of cool. I said, so we were throwing around some ideas and we came up with the idea that we wanted to have all of the songs reflect what we call women warriors of the arts. And so this is like women who had not only thriving artistic careers, but they also had social justice careers. So these are people like Nina Simone, Elizabeth Catlett, and also too, Alice Coltrane, another one. So what we decided is that we would challenge ourselves that you would write with one of those muses in mind. So even though you didn't have to copy them, like the song that I wrote, She, is Alice Coltrane. That was I had her in mind in terms of like the rolling chords because she was the harpist and but then I also said, keep in mind that we are women warriors in arts too. They're not just these big names, but we are also. So even if you're writing based on some feeling that you have, that still meets the theme. So that was the first thing I really that made it special. Second thing was we really took all of our albums look good. All of our albums look good. So I was very intentional about how I put together the CD. The line, the graphics of all of it. The design is what I mean. The design. So because it was mainly women, the cover is a picture. There's two women that are kind of looking up, like and the two women were two of my former neighbors. And so, but both of them were going through some challenges. And so I thought, even though people don't know that made it more organic, so the two of them. Then on the inside, faded in the background, kind of like the wallpaper of it. My father was a visual artist. And one of the things that in my way of honoring him, one of the things that he loved to paint were women. I have tons of portraits of women. And so what I did is I picked some of my favorites and I had the graphic designer fade them in the background. So if you open it up, and it's a pretty extensive, because this is a trifold. So if you open it up, you can see in the background, you can see all of the women's faces that are in the background. I do give him a credit for that. And one of them actually is my mother, a portrait he did of her. The other thing was I wanted liner notes. And I just mentioned earlier, Marsha Philpott. Marsha, her pen name is Marsha Music. She's an icon here in Detroit. She's amazing. Her father had a record shop and very iconic record shop in Black Bottom, before Black Bottom got torn out for the freeway system, as has happened in a lot of Black communities across this country. But her father was one of the first to record Aretha Franklin when she was very young, because her father recorded Reverend C.L. Franklin's sermons, so it just, and others, So Joe Battle. No, is it Joe Battle? I think it's Joe Battle. I don't want to say it's her father's name wrong, but I think it's Joe Battle. I'm not sure. But at any rate, just amazing. So if I was, and she writes, her writing is it just blows you away. It really hits right here because she writes a lot of blogs. She's been asked to be on film, all kinds of things. So if anybody was going to write liner notes, it was going to be her. So when I went to her, she said, oh, I've always wanted to write liner notes. I was like, what? Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And so our liner notes that she produced were just absolutely amazing. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And so anyway, and then of course the music that ended up coming from it was just from the project that we came up with. I never considered myself, I still don't, a composer. But I'm very proud of the compositions that I put on that. Actually, all the compositions that I've done. And then out of that album were the 2 music films that we did. And both of the music films are my songs. And the music films were all my idea and everything. And of course, like I said, I wanted to showcase Detroit. I wanted it to just be very upbeat, and which it is. And you can see all of that in the song She. The other song is We Breathe. And We Breathe I wrote because I've always wanted to do a spoken word on a song. So that provided me an opportunity. If you want to, listen, advice. If you don't get an opportunity, if nobody's giving it to you, make your own. So, so that's what I did. I said, if I want to do a spoken word, then let me write a song and put some spoken word on it, which I did. But in the film, the women who are in the film, the film turned out absolutely beautiful. Every single one of them were also going through something very particular. One of them was literally contemplating divorce while they were in the film. Another one, because I'm not going to identify them, but another one was, after they filmed them, was on their way to their grandfather's funeral. Another one had just had some really, really good news, so all the ladies in there, literally it became something that was more than I thought, because I started when I saw these women and who I was asking to do it, I was like, you know what, in my poem, in my spoken word piece, I talk about the strength of women, no matter what we're going through. And it's called We Breathe because our breath carries us through. If you think about it, like when you're giving birth, or when you come home and you're just like so tired, and that breath just pulling that out. So and breathe, a lot of times people say just breathe, just breathe, and in the mental health world, we use breathing a lot, to regulate emotions and things like that. So that breath is so very, very important. And so that was that was one of the bigger things that helped that be one of my favorite releases, one of our favorite projects, my favorite projects.
Nice. And I love that you mentioned Alice Coltrane, because ironically, and I haven't heard her music in a while. We were my husband and I, we went to see Ani DeFranco a couple of nights ago. And as they were transitioning from the opening band to her, and then when they were at the end of the concert, and as people were leaving, they were playing Alice Coltrane, and I recognized it, and it made me think, I wonder how much did she incorporate breathing in her, because when you listen to her riffs, it literally sounds like she would have taken such a deep breath beforehand.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And then exhaled, and it would have been like this long, oh my God. Now I'm
her music is amazing.
Yes.
And her son Ravi was here with Brandy Younger, harpist Brandy Younger. Brandy is elevating a lot of not only Alice Coltrane's music, but also Dorothy Ashby. Dorothy harpist, and Dorothy, is a Detroiter. We have ties to Dorothy because her husband John Ashby was my father's best friend, and so John was my dad's best man, and Dorothy played at my parents' wedding. And so so that breath, and with Alice, because of the she was into meditation and all of that, that's also very much, when you're meditating, they say you concentrate on the breath. And so but it's interesting, I'm glad you brought that. I never actually made that connection until just now, so that's interesting.
And she was just so brilliant, because speaking of Brandy Younger, she's coming through here playing a concert at UMass Amherst in a couple of months. And then Ravi Coltrane, when I worked at the Fine Arts Center, I worked his concert, and he was phenomenal and just
Yeah,
such a
absolutely.
sweetheart.
Yeah, very nice. He was at the Blue Llama here in Ann Arbor. I got a chance to meet him, and Brandy has been here too, of course, a couple of times. Yeah, doing things. So yeah, for sure, doing concerts. Awesome.
Nice. And speaking of, and I'm gonna kind of skip a couple of questions because
Sure.
also just being mindful of time.
Of
So
course.
this question, as a, and this is more for me and my students, but as a,
Students, my students.
yeah, exactly. As a creative professional, how do you separate the musician, independent artist from the producer, and as the manager of Musique Noire? How different, if at all, are your negotiating and planning strategies and tactics?
Okay, so they I won't say they're very different because you still have basic principles that you have to do, but it depends on the situation. It really depends on what hat I'm particularly wearing. So musician and independent artists are kind of, for me, is kind of the same. I'm an independent artist. I'm not assigned to a record deal. I can come and go as I please. I can turn down projects if I want. I'm not beholden to any contract in terms of that. First of all, as they say, know your worth. Okay. In all of it. That's how I know negotiate. And here's the thing, knowing your worth, and I heard somebody say this, so I'm stealing it, but actually people, and you're the same way. And first of all, you have absolutely grown by leaps and bounds and all, and from when we first started talking. So absolutely. But people can't, if we really charged our worth, people couldn't afford us. So period. Nobody can, because we don't want to limit the word worth. Okay, so we don't want to limit the word. So I would rather say I look at worth as impact. You know what I mean? So this is, you're asking me to do this thing. You're asking me because you can't do it. So you need, you need some help with this thing. You're also asking me because I do it well. Yep. So you're not just hiring me, you're hiring my impact. Yes. And that is part of my worth. So it really depends on a lot of factors. So let's say you're a musician that wants to get into space like Cliff Bells, or like a place that provides music, a coffee house or something like that. They will know what they're going to want to pay. If we're talking about money, they're going to know what they're going to want to pay. You're going to also have to know if that's acceptable. And that's where you're like, if they want you to play all night for tips only, and you're fine with that, then that's okay. But if you're looking to get something more, you have to ask, first of all. You have to kind of, and again, it depends on what the situation is. Is there, okay, so I don't really pay for tips only. Is there room for me to get $100? I don't know, whatever it is you want to say. But being brave enough, and sometimes it's not just, if you practice this enough, it doesn't require bravery. It's just a natural part of what you say. Or like if you do have a release. Now, young people aren't really doing CDs, and some of them are doing with vinyls coming back. See, some people are doing CDs because people do like to have the stuff. But that's one of the things I try to encourage young people are at least on the music side, is to have some kind of product, because you never know who's coming to your show, and you might make money at the table. I just attended a concert from a young harpist here that I mentor, and she had T-shirts. They were beautiful. She didn't make a lot of them, but she had, and she sold merch. So, the thing is, no matter what level you are, whether you're a musician starting out or whether you're Beyonce or Prince or whoever, money is made in the live. Your most money is made in the live shows or in your live. That's where you're making most of your money. So give people something more than just your, the music. Mm-hmm. When it comes to visual art is a little different. Theater is a little different. It's a little different. But this is just if you're being asked to provide some sort of service, performance, or whatever, the first thing you're going to have to do is decide what they're offering you is acceptable. And where we get stuck is that sometimes it's like, well, some is better than none. If I don't take this, I'm not going to get anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking causes you not even to want to negotiate. You won't even learn how to negotiate. So again, it's a little more specific depending on what you're doing. But as far as like the way that I negotiate, me as a I like right now I've got people who are saying, we want you just to provide an hour of background music, blah blah blah, whatever kind of thing. So so first of all, I ask them what their budget is. If they're gonna, if their budget doesn't even match where I'm at all, then I'm not the person for them, and then I will refer. I will also charge for the referral. So that it may be that. When I'm a longer term thing, like for example, the house concert music series now, and I've done 2 of them now, that depends a lot on not only my time, also again, I'm always in the back of my mind, my impact is already there. My worth is already, because you're asking me, like I said, because I'm good at doing this and people respond and you're making money and all of that, those types of things. I tell you what I don't do, and you've heard me say this too. And again, maybe when you're first starting out, you kind of do this. But I would say even when you're starting out, make it a habit of knowing what you would like and to make. What kind of money would you like to make? A lot of times what we do, no matter what level, is that we look over the fence and see what somebody else is doing. How much are they charging over there? Remember, I often say that. That's kind of the last thing you do. The last thing. So I've been like some of the young people that I mentor here or that I've coached here in Detroit, I've said to them, you're complaining about the fact that you're not making any money, but you keep going, you're doing your own shows, which is great, but it's doing like $10 at the door. In Detroit, you can do more. In other cities, sometimes nobody is not gonna pay more than $10. But I have to tell you, I took Music Noir to Chicago. We charged $20 at the door. People were balking at it, but I'm like, you gonna come in or you're not. So, but we still filled up the space. You know what I mean? Then people were like, $10 and $20. Okay, then we're not your band. And so again, I'm a little further along on the spectrum of, of experience, but at the same time, your negotiating tactics will grow depending on the types of opportunities that you have and how you're looking at your creative practice as a whole. So even like I said, on the small end, if you want to make $300 at the end of the night, if you want to make $300 at the end of the night, you have to keep that that's your number.
Yeah.
That's your number. If you got a cell phone bill and a this and a that and that, and you're going to do this, so that you can cover gas money, whatever it is, you can start there and come to the table with, those numbers in your, of course you don't say all that, but, in the back of your mind, okay. And the negotiation is to try to get as close or sometimes above as possible. When I book musicians and people ask me to book musicians, one of the first things I do is I let them know I'm not cheapening the musicians. Yeah. Any musicians you want from me, you're going to have to pay X, Y, Z. If that's not in your budget, then I'm not the person for you, because there's people that do. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just really have to be careful about, because otherwise you're out here just wasting your time and getting burnt out. So, so negotiating tactics look different depending on what it is, but you have to start with knowing your impact and your worth and what you need to make for that gig. If it doesn't matter and you just want to play, that's totally fine too. Right now I have someone asked me to find them some musicians to play for tips only. And I said, that's fine, but I'm just looking for people who just like want to play for fun, or, not my usual roster musicians I'm not going to call. So, that's basically how it worked out.
Yeah, so great. And then also too, the other thing that I tell people, especially my students, you have to, when you're thinking about the rate that you're getting, you have to really think about what you are investing to get to that gig.
Yeah.
Think about like not only gas and the outfit and all of that, but think about the time that it takes you to prep the thing. And it, like, you have to,
absolutely.
you don't want to come out in the red.
That's correct. And that's also why you don't look at other people.
Yep.
You know, the other person is charging this because they got their set of things they got to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why you can look at that, you know, but start with everything you're just talking about. Think about the things that the bills you need to pay, because everything you're talking about is a bill. It's a bill.
Yes.
It's a bill, you know, it's a bill. So think about all of the things that you've got to, like you said, invest in. That's why you don't look at what somebody else is doing first, because they got to invest in the different stuff than you do. And that's also what sometimes can cause you to get frustrated. You're not matching what you have and what you need. You're basing on what somebody else is doing. So, but that's very, very, very important to think about those things for sure.
Yeah. I have a couple more questions for you before we end our conversation today. So, as a producer, and this is important too for folks to consider when you are starting to shop around for places to actually perform and gig with and partner with too.
Mm-hmm.
As a producer, can you describe the characteristics of your ideal or favorite venue and working situation? What should folks who are interested in producing concerts and events keep in mind as they're building a portfolio of venues and business partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, well, like for example, with Musique Noire, and this is really my group. There's this particular brand that we have. You know, you look at us, you see classy women, you see, you know, intelligence, you see all of that, even just looking at us, you know, so I want the venue to reflect that. I'm not taking Musique Noire to a dive bar. You know, nothing wrong with dive bars. Nothing wrong with dive bars at all. They're fun. There's a lot of good musicians that go in and do fabulous there. Nothing wrong with that. That's just not our aesthetic. Okay, so that's the first thing. That do I believe that the aesthetic of the venue matches my brand, matches our brand, and because in turn it's going to reflect the type of people they attract.
Yeah.
You know, and you know we have a wide range of music followers, but most of our followers are very into music. Like not just like listening, they're very intellectual. They read, it's a different, and we also tend to have a slightly older demographic, but we have younger people that like us too. And by older, I mean 40 and up. That's basically most of our demographic is 40 and up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I don't do difficult. I don't do that. So I don't care how beautiful your place is. If it's a bear to work with you, we're not going to be there. So you want to kind of see if you can work with people who have worked with musicians before, or whatever your thing is, even if it's visual art, or, you know, if you want to do an art show or whatever, you know, talk to your community, talk to your fellow artists and see, you know, are there places that are welcoming and easy to work with and supportive? Supportive means, are they going to allow you to promote are they going to promote your stuff on their socials and website? And do they have a mailing list? That's gold right there. You know, are they already having performances and things like that, or whatever it is you're doing? So that you know that they're experienced with working with the type of art that you're presenting to them. Those are the things we definitely have to start there. If those things match, then even some bumps in the road are not too bad. So some of the most favorite places that I like performing are art galleries. Places that have art. So the Enamdi Gallery, we've done 2 there. He's amazing, George. But George and I also have a personal relationship because he lived in the neighborhood here, and I used to teach his kids way back in one time. So I've known him we're friends. We're considered friends, but we still do business, for sure. And so the first time I didn't have to rent his space. The first time he put us on his, he had a little series kind of thing. So he did that. The second time though, I actually rented the larger room space, and we filled it up, and we charged, it was $35 at the door, because again, his demographic is used to paying, because that's what he was charging for the stuff that he was doing. So his demographic is our demographic, and was used to paying that. And we filled that room. We absolutely filled that room. And it was both times we did. And the first time we were kind of an unknown. It's interesting though. Every time we did a CD release party, packed. The place would be packed. It'd be amazing. But anyway, that's one place. We also, that's one of my favorite places to do it. Second favorite, there's the Aretha's Jazz Cafe in the music hall. The small space fits about 90 people, 80, 90 people. The guy, Ted, I think it's Ted, I don't know if he's still there, but Ted is easy to work with. He's easy to work with, you know. So the hardest part was just finding a date, you know, because a lot of people use Aretha's Jazz Cafe. But it's a nice space, got a nice stage. We did our second for the Reflections We Breathe CD release party. We did it there. It was actually overflowing. You know, Ted was like, "Oh my gosh, you know, the fire marshals," you know, so standing room only. It was crazy. But they have like the music hall, as you know, is a very marquee theater. So they have the you know, the sign in the front, and they had all our, you know, our name and lights and all that kind of stuff. That was nice. Also, my favorite place to play, and you can't always get in there, but we were added to the Friday Night Live series at the Detroit Institute of Arts.
Oh, wow.
We performed in 2019 in the Diego Rivera Court. And it was, I mean, we had well over 1,000 people because, you know, people come and go, but it was, and, you know, it's huge, and it was packed. And it was amazing. It wasn't as easy to work with, but I was able to get it done. It was certainly worth it. So that's generally, I mean, and we've also done quite a few festivals and things like that. But again, they've been, for the most part, they've been easy. I mean, in the beginning of our career, we had a couple of little bumps, but we were kind of learning. I definitely was learning some things as a band leader, because I've done a lot of festivals, but I was always a part of somebody else's group. But so that's what I would say. The festivals were always fun too, but I would say my favorite venues were like the places where I booked shows. So like the art galleries, you know, DIA, just a lot of fun there. A lot of fun, definitely.
Quick aside question before I get to my last two questions.
Yes.
In the Diego Rivera, what were the acoustics like? Because it just seems so.
Yeah, it was amazing. It actually really wasn't too bad. So, and they didn't do a lot. I've performed there with a couple of other people too. I just did one thing in December. And so we had pickups on our instrument and our amps. And it worked. And they had just like a little bit of, for the microphones, you know, they just had the speakers for the microphones. So literally, it was like acoustic coming through the amps, and it totally worked. And I couldn't, Aaliyah's husband was there, and he was in the back. And I said, you know, because he's a musician, I said, let me know if it sounded, because I was a little concerned. Was it going to sound muddy or whatever? It didn't. Wow. Yeah, it did. A lot of people, well, you know, Friday Night Live is very popular. They bring in some of everybody. So it was, and it hasn't been bad. It hasn't been, you know, it's pretty reverberant, but it doesn't, like I said, it's not muddy. It wasn't muddy. Yeah, he said it was great. He could hear us and everything. It was good. Nice.
So coming up, this is what I've been waiting to have you on for. It took us a while, but I needed folks to hear like why you need to seek out Michelle. So coming up is your 4th annual virtual retreat for creative professionals. I attended the first 2 and just registered to attend this year. Can you offer a sneak peek into the 3-day program? What are some of your goals with this particular program? And what do you hope folks will leave with at the completion of the retreat?
Absolutely. So the reason I started the retreat was because, again, as I mentioned, people were coming up to me going, I got all this stuff. I don't know what to do. This sounds good. Can you tell me? Blah, blah, blah. So I thought, you know, a retreat environment would be awesome because it's a container where you can sit down and pay attention to this stuff. As they say, you're not working in the business, you're working on the business, you know, because no matter what you're doing, even if you're a young person trying to get a gig in a bar, that's still business. That's still that's your creative business. And a creative professional is basically anyone that has what I define as like creative service-based business, because some of my clients are like makeup artists and jewelry designers and things like that. But if you're doing something creative and you're getting paid for it, you're a creative professional. So, we can argue about, the amateur versus professional. We're not doing all that. But for my purposes, if you're getting paid for it, my retreat generally are for people who are experienced. However, I do have people who are kind of in the beginning stages of a career, but not at the very, I'm not launching anybody's career. These are people, you're already out there, you're already performing, that kind of thing. So the retreat requires, or provides structure, but structure in a way that creatives need. Because sometimes people think that this is business thing, all the creativity is going to get sucked out of it. Not at all. So, within this retreat, this year, I'm starting to run a in-person and a virtual retreat. And sometimes you think, virtual, how much can you get? But as you know, you attended twice and you get a lot. So we begin. I begin by addressing, because also I'm a therapist. We do address the emotions around what you're doing, your thoughts around what you're doing, because it doesn't matter if you have the strategies and all of that. If your mindset is limited, or you're running on fear, none of what you're going to get at the retreat is going to work. So I always like to start there, in terms of, now, of course, this is kind of like the high level of it. We do a lot of interactive things and so forth. But so the issues that I have.
Michelle, you just went mute.
Okay, there we go.
No. You went mute again.
Why does it keep going on mute? Okay.
There we go.
All right. Hopefully that won't happen again. I'm not touching anything. So
yeah.
Just let me know if that happens again. Okay. So
I will.
Anyway, I was pulling out the workbook because you do get a booklet to take with you that you can use for sure. So, all right. So the first thing, like I said, we start with visioning. Just talking about like, what is it you want to do? What are some of the visions that you have for your creative practice, and how can we, make them so that they're plain to you, so that if you've got a bunch of different things, which is totally fine, let's make them so that they make sense to you. And the thing is, the great thing about this retreat is it's not a cookie cutter templates and all that stuff. As you know, I specifically talk to you and say, this is what you need to do. So that's one of the things that we do. We also, what I say is delve into my process that deals with the 3 M's: money, marketing, and mindset. So I already talked about mindset. Then we talk about money, because money and creativity, we get a lot of frustrations around that. People aren't paying us what we should get, all of those other kind of things. But it's not just getting paid. It's also, how can you bring revenue into your creative practice? There's a lot of ways that you can do that. And I give you a lot of very innovative ways that you can do that. And even if you're already doing these things, it's always good to check in and say, okay, you know what? I forgot I need to do this too. Or maybe this is a new thing that I've been meaning to do. Let me make sure I reactivate that particular funding source, or maybe now I'm trying to develop passive income streams. And so let me talk about some ways that I can do that. There's a lot of things that we're going to talk about that will give you ideas in terms of doing that. We also talk about time. How you're, again, this is not a rigid structure. It's like, how do you want to develop, to have less chaos in your days and in your creative practice in a way that fits you and fits you. So I'm not going to tell you, okay, from 9, get up in the morning, and from 9 to 10, you need to be. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. What we're doing is talking about, like I said, I'm a night owl. My business coach talks about, getting up early, 7 o'clock in the morning, and journaling and doing all that stuff. Absolutely not. So, not me. So we're, again, it's very tailored to whatever it is that works with your circadian rhythms. So we talk a lot about review, looking at your time, not just in a daily and weekly basis, but what things on a larger scale do you want to produce and promote and present this year, and how do we reverse engineer that time-wise? And a lot of times people are they're not looking at those ideal times. They're just like kind of grinding. We also look at what supports do you need? We out here trying to do all this stuff by ourselves. And so a lot of us refuse to ask for help. And so there's a lot of ways and places that you can get support for the things that you need to do to take the heavy lift off. And there's a lot of unique ideas I'm going to be providing you on that front in terms of that, because a lot of people will say, oh, I never thought about that. Are there some things you've been doing, even though you're successful? Are there some things that you're doing that you need to let go? Like this, sometimes I'll say that to you. Well, why do you keep doing that? Because you're on this now. Let's elevate this part. This is what happens when you have somebody really looking at your stuff. You get a separate set of eyes on it, especially eyes from a person that has done it and done it successfully, continuously, and is willing to do it in collaboration with you. I'm not here dictating things that you need to do. It's in collaboration with you. And also, you get to your goals a lot faster. At the end of the retreat, I always have everybody my signature plan. You come up with a plan of what we do, and we do them by quarters. And the idea is to have time to kind of sit down and actually everything you absorb for 2 of the days. On the 3rd day, we make the plan. Like, what are you actually going to do? And then I really do have you be accountable, because like this year, I'm really going to be reaching back out to everybody. I think I did that before too. Like, okay, so how's it going? Do you need additional support? What do you need reminders of? That type of thing. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens in between that I haven't mentioned yet, and a lot of other things that I provide for you. If you there's 2 levels. There's a general admission, a VIP level. Either way, you're getting tons of value from this retreat. But the VIP level, you get extra attention. You get extra attention. And for people that pay in full for the VIP level, you actually get a complimentary 1-hour session with me. So, and that'll be after the retreat. So, but it has the 4 retreats that I have done, virtually and in person, have been just amazingly impactful. When you go to the sales page for the retreat, you can see all of the, including yours, all of the testimonials. And again, this isn't bragging. I do this because I know what it's like to kind of like be all over the place as well. And I know that once I got coaching, worked with my business coach, it really helped me to streamline things and to also think about things I hadn't thought about before. There was so much that my sister and I brought into our business as a result of coaching that we never would have done on our own. So it's I wanted to provide that in this for folks that are in creative professional careers, for sure.
Yeah, because I can definitely say the biggest reasons why I wanted to register, particularly for this year, is because everything I'm doing is growing so much. And right. I'm like,
yeah, scaling. Right. Like, great. I mean, that's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem. Yeah. So it's just like, what can I cut? And then also passive streams of income. And then lastly, like my favorite part is literally the mapping out the year. Like you could do it on your own, but I like how you build up to that because you give us strategies to then be accountable to that. Because every single time I've done the retreat and I look back at that calendar, I'm like, oh, I did all of these things.
Exactly. It's a wonderful archival diary of your creative professional life. It really, really is. The other thing I want to say too is the community. You can't beat that. I mean, the other folks, the attendees, a lot of times they'll have ideas that they'll share your way, and it's nice to hear people, that are going through what you're going through, and being able sometimes to inspire them. There's a lot that goes on just in the synergy of the community of what happens at the retreat, for sure.
And speaking of LaTanya Orr, who attended the retreat with me, she was on the podcast recently. Yes. And this book has been so amazing. But this, for folks, so this was the book that we kind of talked about on the interview with Black Writers Read. It's short,
Mhm.
but it gives so many amazing prompts to think about your own self-esteem, your
Yes.
self-work and confidence and things like that. So I'm shouting out another one of Michelle's
Yay!
clients.
Tanya, yay! I'm so proud of both of you guys. Yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
but it's definitely a community.
Yeah.
Definitely a community.
And speaking of, both of you two are, that's a great example of this. When you come into this retreat, I'm giving you, things to do, but it's the implementation. It's you all made this happen. I'm just like kind of like the fire starter. Like, okay, here's some things. Let me see what you got. Okay, let's try to do let's work through these things. And, in a supportive atmosphere, whatever. Nobody's shading you if you're doing stuff that's wrong. See, that's the thing about coaching. You have to be coachable, which means that you can't look at everything. If someone says, well, this isn't working, like I have another coach that I'm working with, and she did a wonderful deep dive into a lot of stuff that we were looking at. And there were some critical things, but she didn't lie. There were some things that was missing, I get it, so I didn't take it personally. Oh, I'm a failure. I didn't do it. No, coachable just means you're willing to listen and you're willing to implement. And also about knowing your worth, be willing to implement. If you know yourself well. I didn't implement everything that my coach said because I knew some things didn't align, and that's fine. The more you can know yourself, the more impactful coaching is for you. Because the thing that we as coaches can't do, I mean, we can help, with the mindset and things like that, but we can't make that part happen. We can tell you need to know your impact and your worth in order to negotiate correctly, price your things correctly. But ultimately, you're the one that has to stand in the mirror and say that to yourself. When you come into the room. So the reason you all are doing so well is because of you. And so I appreciate, really being a part of both of you all of my clients' lives. I don't take this for granted at all. This is a calling for me. And that's why I say I'm always teaching. I've been since I was little. And also, the legacy of my family too has been about lifting as we climb. That's my whole family was about service, everybody, including like my cousins. And we are definitely known for serving in different capacities, but that is what we're not selfish people. We do this so that others can also live their best lives, and however that looks. I have cousins who are ministers and who are counselors, and or whatever it is they're doing. They're always doing something so that someone else's life is better. And so that's why we do this thing, and then that is why we do this, and it's definitely why I do it, for sure. And so I'm always extremely excited every year, looking forward to this retreat, because it just really warms my heart to see people going from that doubt and that place of not knowing to the aha moments and and then the ultimately is to see it after this, how it implements after the retreat or after the coaching, as you and LaTanya and all of my clients have shown. And so I'm really, really, really proud of all of you all, and I'm honored to have been on the journey with you and to continue to be on the journey with you. So for sure.
And I also want to mention to folks before I get to my last question, creative professional, because I've been in the retreat space with you, not only with authors and musicians and composers, but a jewelry maker, makeup artist. Like creative professional is essentially taking that skill and making it your means of living.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. If you have a creative thing that you're doing, you get paid for it, you're a creative professional.
Yeah.
You're a creative professional. Because I don't want people to think, I don't have this big career. Because like when I say it's for experienced creative professionals, as I mentioned before, I'm not launching your business. I'm not, if you're just getting out of college and haven't been playing, you don't know how to do any of that. Those folks I'm not doing, and again, not that you don't need coaching, not that you don't need coaching, but there's a little more time, at least for this retreat anyway. There's a little more time it takes to do that kind of thing. And for this retreat, I'm not talking about my coaching in general. I would certainly be willing to work with someone like that. period. But I'm just saying for the retreat, it really is for someone who's already out there and getting paid for their services, have a good experience. But it doesn't matter though if you've done that only for 1 or 2 years, or if you've done it for 30 years, so that part is fine, but if you haven't started, then the retreat would not be for you. So that's who it's not for. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Michelle, besides the retreat coming up, what is next for you in terms of your own work, and how can the Recasting the Culture community support you on this journey?
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, mainly a lot of the things I've been talking. Well, the retreat is a big thing. So yeah, so that's coming up. Right now I basically have like recurring things happening. So, preparing again for the next season 17 of my concerts in Boston Edison, doing that. I'm also a part of Chamber Music Detroit. We have launched, well, I shouldn't say we, but a very good friend of mine who's on their board. I'm basically kind of on her advisory committee, but I helped her kind of do some of this like conceptualization. They are doing a concert that is kind of like, remember Classical Roots in Detroit, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra?
Yes.
So the Classical Roots was basically a celebration of Black artists and Black composers. My friend, Carolyn Demps, was asked to be on the board of Chamber Music Detroit, and she said she would only join if they would do something similar in the chamber music space. And so she launched last year the inaugural Black Artists, Black Composers, and she's called BABC, under the Chamber Music Detroit. And so we'll soon be preparing the second concert. Last year we had Melissa White, but we also combined that with violinist Melissa White, as you know, but we combined that with two absolutely fabulous jazz performers. After she played, then they played Brendan Davis, who also was in the retreats, as well as he also did one of my programs, and Kassan Belgrave, the great trumpeter Marcus Belgrave's son, who's a saxophonist and flutist. Yes, so they performed also. So we're looking forward to doing the next BABC with Chamber Music Detroit. And then I'm always accepting, coaching clients. Right now for, therapy clients, as long as you're in Michigan, I'm only licensed to practice in Michigan. You can see, if you go to my website, michellemay.net, as you have there, you can see all of the different ways that you can connect with me. There is my therapy practice is practically full, which is also a good thing to have. I think I have 1 or 2 slots left, but so those are the different things. And then again, things just come up. I get a call and, Stevie Wonder's coming to town, or that the life of a freelance musician. So and I also, as I mentioned, Musique Noire. I went to a performance that Jovia had here at the Women Who Drum, and she mentioned Musique Noire from the stage, and because she played one of the songs that she had composed, and this roar came from the crowd, and it reminded me that, oh my gosh, even though we haven't performed for a little while, people still remember us. And so I'm going to be working on hopefully getting us out there for 2026 for a few gigs. So we shall see.
Because I would love to see y'all live, because I have loved your music a lot.
And you are our super fan, and we so appreciate you. In fact, I need to send you a gift. I'm going to definitely do that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because I have the catalog on my iTunes. I got the CDs. It's just brilliant.
Well, what's funny is, I guess Spotify, but that's a whole nother thing. It'll tell me how many streams we have a month, and I said, okay, I know at least 3 people that
yes,
and you're probably one that these streams are for sure.
Yes, and I really hope that there is a way we can bring y'all out here to New England, because I think y'all would do really well out here.
Well, we would love to come, but we'll negotiate, as we say.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I feel like people were listening and watching in on a very personal conversation, because these are questions that I've always wanted to ask you in this particular forum. And I have more, but I'm also just like, this just seems like a really nice place to end. And then, of course, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, you will. You absolutely. I'm very happy to have you at the retreat again. It'll be like a little homecoming for you.
Yeah, I need it because this year I was just like I was telling a really good friend of mine who I'm referring to you as well.
Mhm.
I was just so much has happened in just a couple of months. I'm just like, okay, how do I
Yep.
streamline this more? And I'm at a point now where I'm like, what can I get rid of?
Yeah.
Which I think is a really good problem to have.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, what will I feel okay sunsetting
Yeah.
for a bit?
That's good. That's a good
Yeah,
place to be. And that pruning is important. That
yeah,
pruning important. Because keep in mind now, when you prune, sometimes you're pruning and letting it go forever. But sometimes you're just like you said, sunsetting it, but you might sunrise it, you know what I mean, later. You never know. Suddenly, you revive something that you did before, and maybe you change it around. So the idea, remember what I said, I say no to as many things as I say yes to. And so that also includes pruning some things. For we music noir was an example, and they're not pruned. We had to pause for a minute because things
yeah,
were it was just too much, because everybody's all doing all of those things. That doesn't mean music noir is done.
right.
We're not done. I told them, I said, I think we're just going to be one of those groups that, we just show up, and because people love us, they show up, which makes it easy. That's a great problem to have too. It's not like we have to always have a new, because we're not like huge. No matter where we go, people are finding us for the first time, and our CDs sell out like that. And every time we go to a performance, so this is important. So I'm glad that you're coming and checking in with yourself and deciding what do I want my creative practice to look like, and in this season. That's important.
Yeah.
That's
And
important.
also things too that I'm missing. Like I miss music so much. It's just and it's 20 years later where I'm like, okay, how can I get back into it? Because I left music because not only and it was ironic at the University of Michigan, I wasn't the only one, fortunately, but I was the only one doing the thing that I was doing, clarinet. And it was not only lonely, but I faced a lot of racism. Like I will never forget when the Sphinx competition started. I went to the very first concert, and then started working for the organization years later. That following year, and then I was meeting other musicians and hearing their stories, and I was just like, "Am I ready to go back? No," but I've always kept my foot in music somehow or another. Like I'm still a member of Sigma Alpha Iota International Music Fraternity. Like I've
Mhm,
kept my foot in music somehow or
mhm,
another. And then
mhm.
speaking of classical music, classical roots and the Sphinx organization, I still tell my students there are some fun stories
Oh yeah,
from both
yes.
because I did classical roots. I was on the planning committee, what, 3 years in a
Oh,
row?
were you? Okay.
I
Mhm.
was,
Yeah.
and I miss. There's just like a lot because and I tell people that world of philanthropy does not exist out here. Like
Yeah.
out here in New England, people like to hide their wealth. In
Oh,
Detroit, like people like to show it off. And I remember the
yeah.
classical roots concerts and and I'm like,
Yeah.
I miss that world
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. 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 For sure. Well, that's another uniqueness about Detroit, for sure.
Yeah,
We like to look good and show up and support
yeah,
and all of those things. And so, yeah, that's very important. Important.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for being on. I'm gonna take you off. I'm gonna wrap up some things next. I'll bring you back after I end the stream on for just to check in
I'll
a
stick around.
little bit.
I'll stick around.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. It was a wonderful talk.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, for being here. So thank you all for joining me for this episode of Recasting the Culture. I do have two more, no, three more remaining guests that I want on Recasting the Culture. I haven't quite programmed when I want them on, especially given that Black Writers Read, which I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so excited, is going to be launching next Sunday with a guest who, I'll give you this insight, who was on season 1 and has since published her first book. And I'm really excited to have her on. I will be naming who this guest is over the coming days. So please be sure to Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nicole Young Martin. Please be sure to follow me on Instagram, Black Writers Read, as I will be announcing there at some point this week who the next guest is. And I have an amazing lineup, including, and I'm naming this now since Michelle is on and she knows him, including Dr. Chad Serwick Hughes. He's someone I've wanted to have on for a very long time. He has a new book coming out. I'm really excited to have him on. So support independently produced media, especially now, given the climate that we exist in. Recasting the Culture and Black Writers Read are all self-funded and self-produced. Please consider making a monetary gift to this platform. You have all the ways. I also, in my end credits, I will show you all the things. Please connect with me online. I am at blackwritersread.com. Find me personally on Instagram at Coco_ .pen explore. Also, these are some of the means that you can support this endeavor. I am also on Patreon as well for Black Writers Read. So thank you all for joining me for this episode of Recasting the Culture. Be here, be aware, be someone, and be loved. I will see you all next week for Black Writers Read.